Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this event called We Can All Lead Change, which is looking at taking action for social justice and sustainability and the role we can all play as change makers in that. So this session is part of the master's module that I lead at De Montfort University called Leading Change for Sustainability, which sits within master's programs in energy and sustainable development and energy and sustainable building design. If you're curious about those programs, look on our website. So this is a class within that program. So my students are here in the room as well, but it's also a public event, something we try and do every year to open some of our classes up to a wider audience. And we've been talking this afternoon in the class about leading change and the roles we can all play in that. And we thought it'd be very interesting to have a panel of people who've all had a lot of different roles and around a lot of different issues in trying to make change happen, to hear about their experiences, what they've done, the challenges they've faced, and their advice for people who are interested in having a positive impact in the world in some way. So let me just quickly go through the panel who'll be with us this afternoon. So we'll hear from Lexie Jones, who is the CEO of Change Agents UK, which is a charity based in Rutland that supports young people into careers in sustainability, amongst other things. Mamadou Salah, who is here at DMU, a director of the Centre of Academic Innovation, but also has done charitable work as director of Global Hands Leicester. Taiwo Sofawara, who is a student at DMU and a student ambassador for our Decolonising DMU programme. There's also Matt Friend, who is the interim head of strategy for the energy systems Catapult. So that's looking at the transformation of energy supply in this country towards renewable and sustainable ways of working. And we also have Aisha Ismail, who is one of the executive members of the Students' Union at De Montfort University, looking at student opportunities and engagement. So just a bit of information about how the session will work if you're not familiar with the platform. So you can engage with us through chat. So I think you need to log in through a Google or YouTube account, and then you can leave comments. We're going to have time at the end of the session for questions and answers with the panel. We're recording the session, so it'll be available online afterwards. So bear that in mind, and if people want to watch it again, then that will be possible. And yeah, we want to make it as interactive and interesting as possible. So please do offer questions and comments as we go. So the first question I'm going to actually put very quickly to the panel, but also to people who've joined, is around issues you're passionate about. Kind of what brought you to this session? Why are you interested in social justice and sustainability? So if you're attending, I encourage you in the comments section just to throw in an issue you're really passionate about. And I'm just going to go around the panel to give them a chance in a single sentence to say hello, who they are, what their role is, and an issue they're really passionate about. So if I go to the panel, I'll try and do it in order. So can I go to Lexie first?
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. My name is Lexie Jones. I'm the CEO of Change Agents UK. So we're a sustainability charity and non-profit. And I guess the issue, unsurprisingly, perhaps, on this panel that I am particularly interested in is equality in education for sustainability and skills for the future.
That's great. Thank you, Lexie. So I've lost track of the order I intended to have. So from memory, I'm going to try Mamadou now. So could I bring in Mamadou next?
Thank you, Andrew. My name is Mamadou Salah, and like you see, I'm the director of the Center for Academic Innovation here at De Montfort University. But I'm also a founding director of Global Hands, which is a charity in the Gambia and a social enterprise in the UK. And surprise, surprise, social justice is actually my issue, my bone of contention.
Thank you, Mamadou. Okay, so now could I bring in Taiwo?
Yeah, hello, thank you very much. My name is Taiwo Sofawara, and I am a Decolonising DMU student ambassador. And I'm passionate about just seeing change around me, and I do this through just things I'm creative by. So everything that I can do with my hands, I just, want to make change through those things. Yeah, that's what I'm passionate about.
Brilliant, thank you, Taiwo. And I think Matt, do you want to come in now, Matt?
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Friend. I'm the head of strategy at the Energy Systems Catapult, which is an innovation agency around making the energy system in the UK and globally sustainable, based in Birmingham. So something I'm passionate about is getting businesses to deal with climate change, particularly through making the energy transition happen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. And finally, Aisha, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha. I'm the Student Opportunities and Engagement Executive at Democracies Union. And to answer your question, Andrew, I think what kind of started me and where I am and the activism inside of me would be women empowerment. So that's something that I'm really passionate about.
Excellent. So really good to meet you all and to hear about all those really important issues that you're very engaged with. And we've got a few comments in the chat as well. So we've got people interested in homelessness, in poverty, reducing isolation and discrimination against unpaid carers. So very specific challenge there. So thank you for sharing all of those. Okay, so the way we're going to work the session is I'm going to start with giving you about 5 minutes each to kind of share a story around an issue of change you've been involved with, and then we can have a bit of time afterwards to explore some of the challenges and opportunities around that. So I'll go back to Lexie to start. And so yes, my question is just to kind of share, a capacity in which you've had some sort of impact to influence social change, something you're proud of maybe. So could you tell us a story about that? Over to Lexie.
Sure, thanks, Andrew. I'll do my best. So if I talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we've done sort of recently at Change Agents UK that I guess we're sort of quite proud of. So really the intersection of our work is sort of sustainability, education and employability. And we've really been doing a lot of work in the last 18 months to try and actually reach new audiences and really widen access to that learning and to those opportunities. And I think to try and move sustainability out of the sort of the elite space that it's perhaps occupied in the past. And we've been doing that through a couple of opportunities actually. And we really used 2020, which was quite a challenging time obviously for all of us. And we used that pause, if you like, to actually reflect on some of the research work that we'd done on skills for the future and to really kind of distill, I guess, the learnings that we have had at Change Agents over the last 25 years and our practice during that time with young people and education and skills to put together our Sustainable Futures programme. And we've been able to secure funding, which is meaning that we can actually go out and deliver that to a whole range of young people from very different backgrounds, reaching into institutions and areas that we wouldn't normally be able to do so, and actually bring that education to young people who haven't had exposure to that in the past. So I think that's been something that we're sort of quite proud of in terms of impact. And also sort of in that space, and again, sort of coming out of 2020, we have become a Kickstart gateway, and we have set up a Kickstart for Sustainability program, which is actually designed at bringing young unemployed people in receipt of universal credit and at risk of long-term unemployment into sustainability. And we've so far, I think, got around 75 placements for young people in that situation around the country to bring them in and bring that diversity of thought and experience into the field of sustainability and supporting a whole range of, really brilliant organisations doing great things in sustainability. So I guess there's a little bit of recency bias there, perhaps, in terms of thinking about our most recent work and endeavours really in this area. But I suppose those are the things that immediately sprang to mind, and we're sort of very focused on sort of SDG 4 and thinking about Sustainable Development Goals, which is inclusive and equitable quality education for all. And just reflecting, I guess, on some of the content of the courses and the learning that we put out there, we really do believe that you can lead in sustainability from any chair. And we do a lot of work in helping young people to build the skills and knowledge to be able to participate in that, but also in terms of having the confidence to act. So I suppose that would be my story for that, Andrew.
That's really good to hear. Thank you, and really relevant stuff. So I know there was a report a couple of years ago. It was very shocking around the kind of environmental sector being the least kind of racially diverse field of employment in the UK, wasn't it? I think it was behind gardening or something. And so there's a lot of work to do, and it's really good, especially given the focus of your charity, that you're doing so much around that. That's really good to hear. Lovely. So I think I'll move on to Mamadou for your introductory tale. I don't know what you're going to choose, Mamadou. There's so much you've been involved with, but Tell us a story, Mamadou.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Unashamedly, I consider myself as a scholar activist. I'm interested in the production of knowledge. I'm also interested in activism, and I do not have any shame about that. I say it quite openly and wear it as a badge of honor. About 12 years ago, around 2010, 11, I took some of my students, because I used to organize study visits to different parts of the world. But I took some of my students to the first place we went was the Gambia, and we worked with ActionAid, and we went to one of the villages, and then the ActionAid people were giving us the statistics that about 59% of the people were described as very poor, and just over 21% as poor. And poor means not having more than 1 meal a day. And I think some of the students could not comprehend the magnitude of poverty manifested. And then they asked one of the village head, why are you people so poor? And the village head said, oh, it's an act of God. It's God who's decided that. And I think there was so much hopelessness that the students cried. Some of the students were crying, and I'm the biggest crybaby, and I started crying because of the situation. And I think I went to Nigeria, I think a couple of months later, to do some marketing for the university, and we stayed in one of the nice hotels, and I think where we stayed, after staying there for about 3-4 days, I said, I'm just going to go jogging on the beach. And I went and I saw squalor like I've never seen before, in terms of cardboard houses. And I think, kind of like people defecating in the region, and the magnitude of the poverty when I was living in the 4 or 5-star hotel just a couple of minutes away. And I think this contrast, and like I say to my friends, I cried for 3 days and 3 nights after that. And I think it just hit me, those two things together. I spent the first half of my life in the Gambia and the second half of my life in the UK. So I'm not any stranger to deprivation, poverty, program for sustained development, economic recovery program, and God knows what other program IMF World Bank have been putting into people and injecting them in it. So I think when I witnessed that, I think it was a moment of transformation. I mean, I've known about some of those things, but it hit you because normally it hit you so hard that you can either go into a state of paralysis where you just you're just like in that state where you see things but you're not able to react. But I just said that, this is unacceptable, and it really hurt me, like the wealth of the Gambia, the wealth of Niger, and what we witnessed there. So I just said that I'm going to set up an organization to do something. I cannot be a bystander in this. I have to do something. God knows what I'm going to do, but I have to do something. So I just kind of ended up getting 3-4 people that I identify as having particular skills. Somebody was good in finance, somebody was good in marketing, somebody was good in mobilization. And we started talking about what we're going to do and what our problems were and how we can change it. So I led this process. And in the end, we wanted to call it People's Organization for Development and some oppression or some radical stuff. And I think if we did that, we realized it would put people off because they would see us as too radical. So we said global hands, and the hands around the globe and doing work, and what does it symbolize and what does it mean? And we wanted to focus on international development. Like we built a development hub in Manduar without any funding from major organization. And it was set up with some of the people who were students as well. So we built a development hub, which is self-sustaining in the Gambia. We've taken Africa's first solar power taxi service, working with Nissan to actually be testing the proof of principle. We've worked with people to actually develop solar dryers. 70% of mangoes get rotten or spoiled, but developing a simple solar dryer that costs less than £50 can actually mean that in the rainy season when people are hungry, they can sort it out. We built the second biggest library in the Gambia, there together with staff from here. So we do publishing, because one of the big issues is actually about what Ngugi wa Thiong'o said, that the greatest destruction wasn't the raping and the looting of Africa, but the raping and the looting of the mind, so that we begin to see ourselves in other people's minds. And because of that poverty, if you want to put it like that, of the imagination, not because we're capable, but because we have been, as Franz Fanon would put it, suffering sometimes from post-traumatic stress disorder from all of the evils that have happened before. And I think, but also the stories are told from a very Eurocentric perspective. So how do we decolonize? How do we decolonize those stories, those narratives that are embedded and actually are responsible for imagination. So we set up a journal of critical Southern studies. We set up a publishing house, and some of our books now are being used in, for example, the University of the Gambia as core textbooks, because the history we've been taught of Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama and Albisto da Mosto and the era of classical gold are quite one-sided stuff. And even the role of Wilberforce and Sir Francis, William Wilberforce, and all of these humanitarians, they had a very, very twisted view. But publishing the books that can do that. So in terms of Global Hand, we talked about how do we build capacity. So in my work as a scholar, I do a lot of writing around decoloniality, around youth and community development, around questioning the logic of the system. But in my practice, it's about how do I get people, how do I support people to build their capacity so that they're responsible for their own development. And for me, crying in my room for 3 nights and 3 days, to actually getting up and putting people together and setting up an organization that did so much and is still doing a little bit. It's not as difficult as it seems, but like you see, I'm getting older and I'm not as young as I used to be. So I have to try and find ways of slowing down and getting other people to come in. But yes, that's my story.
Thank you, Mamadou. That was remarkably succinct for everything you covered there, I'd say. And I think I'll hopefully come back to almost the bit in the middle of your story, because you've got that experience that fired you up, that deeply moving experience that got you going, and there's all those impacts along the way. But what made that possible for you? I'd love to explore that later on in the session, hopefully. Thank you for bringing that in. So next up, we've got Taiwo, who's a DMU student involved in our decolonizing project. So probably very different context, but for your own part, whether it's that project or otherwise, could you tell us about change initiatives you're involved with, Taiwo?
Yeah, definitely. So Decolonizing DMU is a project, like it's all in the name. It's literally a project with the vision to decolonize the Montfort University. And this is something that a few universities are also working on individually, about decolonizing their universities as well. And what this looks like is making your university anti-racist. So me and a few other students have come together. It was started by somebody called Mark, I believe. Well, it's been started before, but then this group and this generation of decolonizing DMU is just us, a few students, a few graduates as well, actually, just working on different things to see how this university can be decolonized, and how we were chosen. Actually, like, a lot of us actually volunteered to do it, because it's like we've recognized different problems on our course. Someone like me, to make this a bit personal, I'm a fashion textile design student, and something I tend to bring up that kind of drives me to even do this project is the fact that the curriculum looks nothing like me. So everything is very Western. Meanwhile, I spent a few years in Nigeria, and I studied art and textiles and design when I was there. So I know like a pack of techniques and things in the curriculum that could be, well, in the African curriculum, that could be in this curriculum, that would probably help people to progress, but it's completely missing. And these things you would see on runways as well, because people like the techniques, but it's not being taught in the university. So I think we're just trying to find a way individually how we can encourage them to open their eyes and broaden their horizon, to recognize that it's not a university with only for example, Caucasians. Like, it's a multicultural university, so many people from different kinds of backgrounds, and then we're just all of us all do different courses, I believe, as well. So we can all point and see, like, okay, this is missing in my course. This doesn't look like me. This doesn't appeal to me. Like, I'm happy to learn this, but at the same time, every other person would be will be benefited from learning this and learning that. So that's kind of what we work on. And under the decolonizing, sorry for the background noise, under decolonizing DMU as a student ambassador, I work specifically in the creative department, which focuses on like making merchandise, mainly merchandise and just posters and just everything that communicates with the outside. So if you saw somebody wearing a deco t-shirt, it would be like, okay, what's this about? Pretty much drawing attention to it, but I'm not confined to that, because I get to do things like this. I get to speak to people. We work closely with Georgia State University in America, which has been really good, because we have monthly meetings. We discuss what each university is going through, how we can help each other to move forward, the kind of things we can discuss with our universities to make change and progress to not just the curriculum, but even just the student life in general, because a lot of high achieving students aren't just achieving greatly because they love their course, but they probably have a great university life. The university encourages them to just enjoy it in general, enjoy their time in university and the space, not just the curriculum. So you know, some things that we've done, of course, this last literally over a year now has been very strange for us, because we used to host in-person events. It's been quite different doing it online because word of mouth was really strong, like literally just telling people, oh, are you done with uni? Oh, this event is just downstairs, and people would just come. And that's how we used to get a bit of traffic. So we spent the last year kind of re-strategizing and stuff, but hopefully in due time we'll be able to host events again to just get people to speak up and even to be aware of changes that, you know, go on in their head that can actually happen in reality. But I'm sure I'll be able to speak a bit more about what we do soon. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what Decolonizing DMU is about.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. Also for here, you know, explaining your part in that as well, and the different roles you're playing. Thank you. So next up, and you know, kind of this is a kind of a panel of kind of contrasting experiences, you know, and the thing we talk about in the course is about sometimes you may have a formal responsibility for making stuff happen, or you may be operating informally and trying to influence things. And so we'll bring in Matt now, who has formal responsibility, you know, head of strategy, Energy Systems Catapult. You may not think the Energy Systems Catapult, let's say, is a formal actor, let's see, but how do you get to influence things, Matt?
Thanks for inviting me on, Andrew. So yeah, I'm head of strategy at Energy Systems Catapult, and I've been working on this issue of how you make business deal with climate change, particularly a sustainability issue, for 15 years. Before that, I had a career in business. But actually, the example I wanted to talk about as something that's sort of a way I've had impact and that I'm proud of is actually something that I started working on about 12 years ago with an organisation called the Carbon Trust. So I was working at the Carbon Trust at that time, and we came up with an approach or a methodology for working out the carbon footprint of any product right through its life cycle, from manufacturing right through to sort of being sold and then into use. And we worked with a whole load of companies to say, look, we want to work with you to help you work out what these carbon footprints are. And then if you commit to reducing that carbon footprint, you can put a label from us on your products, and hopefully that will make people want to buy them. And I noticed one of the comments in the chat is from John Rowlett saying he's passionate about engaging homeowners to take responsibility for their environmental impacts. So one of the ideas behind this was getting, you know, people to be interested in what's the environmental impact of the products I'm buying. But the other idea for it was to say, well, how do we therefore, by doing that, can we get big companies to make changes in the way they make products and use products to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, reduce their carbon footprint. And we were working with people like Pepsi, PepsiCo, and if you look on Tropicana orange juice still today, or Walker's crisps, or a load of products from Tesco's, you'll see this label on the side saying we're reducing our emissions with the Carbon Trust. And in fact, my dad lives in Spain, and he sent me literally yesterday, I don't know if you can see this. This is from a packet of milk on from a Spanish supermarket. And this little, where is it? There's a footprint thing on there. I don't know if you can see it, which is the label. It says it's kind of here, about here. Reducing with, you know, we reduce the carbon trust. And it says on it that we have made changes to the way we make the packaging for this thing, actually moving from plastic to plant-based products. To plant-based packaging, we've reduced our carbon footprint by 18%, certified by the Carbon Trust. So I guess the reason I'm bringing up this example is it's something that we started as a really small team kind of 12 years ago with a couple of pilot projects with Walker's Crisps, basically was the first people, and one project with Tesco. And it's still going 12 years later. It's now happening, you know, internationally. I'm no longer involved in it, but this thing that we started with a really small team has grown over, you know, a decade to become something kind of international, and that has helped, you know, all kind of forced in a way big companies to make big changes in their supply chains to reduce their greenhouse gases and their carbon footprint. So something that you can start as a small team of a few people can over time, in a way you may not even imagine it's going to, when you're doing something a different job, still be having an effect, a positive effect on the issue you care about.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. That's a really good example and something that's had influence over time. It's funny how kind of discussions go in waves. I don't know, you worked on this. I paid a lot of attention to those numbers 12 years ago, and there's a lot of discussion about doing that again. I think there's a lot of appetite for that once more. I know like Oatly, Oat Drink has started putting numbers on its packaging, and lots of other businesses are looking at it. So yeah, that's had a real legacy. So really nice example. So thank you for bringing that one in. So finally, I think we've got Aisha from the Moffat Students' Union. So again, formal responsibility to support lots of stuff for students. But yeah, tell us a story, Aisha.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think I'm lucky enough that my job kind of allows me to have both formal and informal responsibility. So I'll kind of go back more into about what a students' union is. So we are part of a university, but we are a separate organization. We also look at, the campaigns that support students, along with a lot of things that we can do to kind of inspire and spark the change, which we were speaking about earlier, inside students and some of the concerns or barriers faced by them. That we're there to kind of break them down, if that makes sense. And I feel very honored and privileged to be in this role where I got to be part of a lot of change in this university. I'll just list a few to begin with, and then we can just kind of take it from there. So my role has to be elected in. So we have to actually start that change, to start that campaigning to get people to vote for you. So that kind of preps you for the job, in my opinion, because then you can go to university meetings, you can go to project boards, and then demand them to have that same change, or any barriers you might face. You have that skill set in essence to work with, if that makes sense. One of the biggest changes that we are working with, so myself and the 4 other executives at DSU, I think a lot of DMU students might know of this, but it is the name change of the university. So we are campaigning to nothing controversial, just a little name change. We are campaigning to change the name of the university. It is something that we haven't just thought of and got to run with it. We have kind of sat down about it. We've had so many different grassroots discussions with so many different members of different departments, and had our head on straight before we actually went out public with it. But it was literally about the fact that GMU is such a diverse and culturally rich university, and majority, like 50%, over 50% of our students are from a BAME background. So we wanted the university to truly reflect that, and truly reflect the students. And a lot of students don't know the name Simon de Montfort. It has been quite some time in history to know where the name comes from, and what it stands for, and how it might be not something positive for a lot of different communities in Leicester. So that's kind of how our change started. DMU back in July set a statement that they want to be truly anti-racist, and that was our moment. That was our kind of window to be like, okay, well, you want to be anti-racist, let's talk about this. But it was difficult. I wouldn't say that was just a walk in the park. That had to be so logistically planned. It had to have, we had to think of almost every single scenario where it could go wrong, and think of all the barriers that may be. But we still miss them, if that makes sense, because there is such a massive thing that you can't anticipate everything. I think the way we went about it, the approach we took, we informed the university first before we just kind of went to the media and be like, well, this is what we're doing. Speaking of media, we had a lot of media. We had a lot of positive feedback and engagement from students and some Leicester communities. But then again, we did have a lot of backlash from media and a lot of negativity. Let's stick with that, from different media groups. Like, for example, I was on Daily Mail, just me, not anyone else, just me on Daily Mail, saying like, this person just wants to change everything in the world, and trying to have that. It was a moment of like, whoa, what's happened? We just released a statement within 24 hours. So many things have just like gone out of hand, if that makes sense. And then it was a lot of crisis management at that point, but we didn't stop. we didn't let that stop us, because we just had to stick to the reason that why we started this in the first place, and that was to have the true representation of our student population shown in the name. Yeah, let's stop there before I go into more details. I can talk about this all day.
That's excellent. That's a really, I mean, partly it's great for you to raise that, just to spread awareness of the campaign within this event, I think. And also, I think it highlights a theme that we're going to explore next around some of the dynamics and challenges around pushing for change, because obviously if you want to change something, there's a lot of people invested in it staying the same in various ways, and so that could be around, you know, people who would be in opposition to you, or maybe more often people who you need to engage with and bring along and interact with, and find ways so that whatever you're suggesting to do differently fits with them and works for them. So yeah, we probably will come back to that example. So thank you everyone, first of all, for that kind of introduction and sharing a story. And for the next half hour, I'm going to put a couple of pre-prepared questions to the panel that build upon that, and then there's time for questions from people viewing. So throw in your questions now or at any stage, and we'll bring them in when most relevant. So the question I wanted to bring next, and for the panel, if you use the private chat just to kind of indicate if you want to come in and respond to it. So it's just around, you know, around the areas you've been working on, or kind of it could be another area in your life. What are the barriers you've encountered around kind of influencing change? And that could be around, you know, like in Aisha's example, that people who don't want Montfort University to change its name, but it could also be around that kind of personal barrier, the things that would affect your ability to step up and take part in a change initiative. I think that part of the story is really welcome as well, because we're not all kind of born with all of the kind of confidence or skills or connections we might have now. So what barriers have you faced, and what's helped you to overcome them? And if you're in the panel, please let me know in the private chat, just if you want to come in. I think Aisha's ready to resume, so I'll go to you first and then hear from others, and aim for kind of 2 or 3 minutes response, roughly. Yeah, go for it.
I'll try and keep it short. But I think I mentioned it earlier, but a lot of logistical things were barriers to begin with. Like, for example, first and foremost, that was a reputational change, if that makes sense. DMU has made a name for itself, and it's known for being that you know, out there, that innovative university in the UK. And so that was one of the biggest concerns when we kind of expressed our views on wanting to change the name. A lot of people like, well, what's going to happen? We had this conversation with like current students and also like alumni as well, because that affects them too. Because then they were like, well, where does our degree stand? Like, what would happen to like the importance of our degree? Where would that be? Would we need another degree? So that to begin with were the initial barriers we faced, just having that conversation. And I'm in a way we are grateful for that, because it helped us plan for our next steps going forward. And I think, in my opinion, when someone speaks to me about inclusion, in what I truly believe in is that education and inclusion goes hand in hand. So I think that was our next step. It was a lot about educating students and educating the people involved in these decision-making, you know, authority, to kind of come to a reason as to why we want to do this, or hear us out. So a lot of it is about you know, building those relationships and that networking, and trying to get that momentum going. So that was a barrier itself, and trying to get everyone on board. And then I think another barrier would be the engagement of the students. We already have a lot of students that were like on like jumping on the bandwagon with us, saying, yeah, this is what we stand for. But then a lot of students were like, well, I don't know, it just seems like a campaign. Don't think I want to be involved in it. And because we have such a wide population, over 27,000 students, so, you know, to find a ratio for that the university would be satisfied with, you know, a number, that was quite hard. And I know after, when we first released the statement, that momentum, that excitement, that you know, what's the right word for it, but that the build up for it, and it kind of goes away through time, and as it goes longer and longer. So to kind of keep that up, that was a barrier as well. And because this was a project that we were doing on the side. So we all had our own personal responsibilities in our work life, and then this was a joint product all of us were doing. So time management was key. We also had similar issues going on with our neighboring university, and then we also faced a lot of barriers within the community itself, because there's not just our universities named after demography. We have a few streets, a hall. So these are just a few barriers to begin with, and I'll stop there. I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah,
but
you've
yeah,
named a lot, and I think. Go on. Did you want to make one final point?
Yeah, I was just kind of saying that the only thing that helped us kind of overcome them was the fact that we sat down and we worked around it and didn't let our emotions override us, and we tried to reason with everyone. We were still stern on our point, but we weren't there with all guns blazing and pitchforks and stuff, but we were there with a reasonable head. Sorry, Andrew, come in.
No, that's fine. That's fine, and I'm glad you added to that bit. And I think there's a general, learning here around, within the course we talk about, anything we're trying to change is a system, and within a system there are multiple actors, stakeholders, all with different ideas, influences, different power, and you need to engage with them all in some way. And for a change like this, it's not a change you force upon people. You need to bring them along, and I can see why. What starts out as a simple idea generates a lot of work. That's another kind of barrier I'd throw in. There's a lot of time to engage with people, having those conversations, and that's certainly my experience is a big part of any initiative. We've got two more people lined up to contribute. I think Taiwo and Lexie. So if I bring in Taiwo next.
Hi. Yes, some barriers. I think this one is. I just thought literally when you asked the question, it came straight to my head. Like, I think the initial barrier I faced was literally internal, because it was me believing that I was the only one feeling and thinking the way I was feeling. So I'm just not going to say anything, and I'll just suffer in silence till the problem goes away. And of course, no change would occur through that. But how that was kind of overcome, or how it was literally overcome, was just surrounding myself with like-minded people and hearing that they go through similar issues, and then that way we were able to start working on things or figuring out how we can actually make this change occur. That was literally the first major barrier. And the second biggest one is actually just COVID, because I think it kind of pushed me back into that place of like, oh, I'm not surrounded by people who think like this anymore. Is it just me? Am I just being crazy? Or maybe it's just me. But obviously with just time going on, we've just learned again to just stay in touch with each other, communicate with people on your course, explore, make friends with people, just listen to what people have to say. And that way, when you're surrounded by like-minded people, your vision doesn't look like blurry anymore. It kind of becomes more clear and everything. And I probably need to speak to Aisha more, because that the whole changing the name of the university, that's also one of our goals. So that was one of our barriers, and how I got through them and how we all got through it.
I'm glad you brought that in. That's a really important thread, I think, for anyone involved in activism in particular, is that you need to keep your energy going by being around with people who are working on the same thing. Definitely. So that's why conferences and events are so motivating, both for the ideas but also to keep you sustained. Because often it's you don't always win, so you need to keep yourself going in some way. So thank you for that. And I think Lexie was going to add something on this one.
Sure, thanks, Andrew. It's an interesting point, actually, talking about conferences and sort of surrounding yourself with different people, was one of the things that I was sort of going to mention in terms of the potential barrier, is that I think we can all often find ourselves in sustainability, finding ourselves in echo chambers. And actually you can find yourselves in a room where you're already in violent agreement with everybody there. And actually sometimes what we need to do is take ourselves out of that a bit more and actually go out and engage and be very outward looking and be very empathetic, and take more people on the journey with us. So I think that's the sort of perhaps the flip side of that point. And I think, both sides of that are really powerful. And I think just the other thing that I think is a recurring word that we hear coming up with the young people and with the organisations that we support as a barrier is just the overwhelmingness of the situation. And overwhelming is a word that comes up again and again. And I think when people feel overwhelmed, it's very easy for that to lead to sort of paralysis and and in action. And I think breaking things down into, and there's a little bit of, thinking about very long-term plans as well, in terms of if we look at embedding the Sustainable Development Goals and, meeting targets for 2030 or 2050, it all feels so far off. Where do we begin? And I think breaking things down into action plans and what can we achieve and what can we do as individuals and people is kind of a way of making that more accessible.
Excellent, thank you. So there's a few really good reflections there, I think, on barriers we face, and they may be personal, and really good to flag that stuff up. It may be about our sector, and Lexie makes a really valid point about getting stuck in a bubble, and it may be about the particular issue we're working on. So thank you for exploring that one. So I think just to build upon another theme that we're touching upon here, different roles we might play. So some of you are working in kind of formal roles, and some of you informal roles, and some of you, so Aisha, for example, are kind of straddling the formal and the informal. I'll be interested in any reflections on, I don't know, how you've been able to make change happen in those different settings. So Mamadou, for example, you've been in those different settings. What's different about it? Where do you feel your most true self? Where are you able to make the biggest difference if you're active in those different settings? Mamadou, straight in there. What do you think?
No, thank you, Andrew. But that's why I'm unashamedly calling myself a scholar activist, because the scholarship, operates within a particular environment, and there are rules and there are rewards and sanctions within the scholarship environment within academia. And then I have to, in order for me to make any progress, I need to publish these papers, I need to do this research, and I need to be validated in a particular setting. But also I'm interested genuinely in research, in writing, in teaching. On the other hand, I cannot just be isolated in the ivory tower, pontificating and doing all of this kind of stuff, intellectualizing. It's good, but what is the cumulative effect of that on the lives of the people in whose name we purport to do all this research? So for me, it's not only that I'm interested in naming the world, I'm also interested in changing the world. And that's why sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you have to work within the system against the system, if you know what I mean. And I think and most of the time, most of the work I've done in Global Hands and in all of these other spaces, it's been something that I've done in my own time, and in addition to all my other roles. As director of the Center for Academic Innovation, I work across the university to engender pedagogic disruption and academic innovation. And and we do this in a number of different ways. As somebody working within activism, it would be very normal for you to see me with a shovel digging a foundation for a library in the Gambia, or actually with my son Hart, actually in the field doing things, talking to people. I am at the forefront of what I do. As a leader, I will not ask people for things that I will not do myself. So I'll be the first person to pick up the dustbin and then do one. So there are lots of limitations in academia, as you know, and sometimes it is very, very difficult to bring that third space within academia, because academia, as you know, is very restrictive. So, like in terms of funding, I have to find funding. And in response to the previous question, I see that a lot of the groups and communities we work with depend on funding from us or other bodies. And part of my problem has been, how do I generate self-sufficiency so that with or without us, these groups can actually generate funding and do things, so that we teach them really how to fish, and rather than giving them all the fish. So yes, I think it's really difficult. There are many bureaucratic hurdles to cross over. But you know what? It's beautiful, because just teaching and writing something beautiful and going into the field and seeing the changes that you talk about come alive. In fact, I am a much better academic because of my activism. Because I know, when you talk about, I play with this theory that, the closer you are to the ship, the smellier it gets. And the farther you are from it, the more likely you're just able to imagine and not to feel it. So as an activist and as a scholar activist, I'm able to smell and touch these things in a way that I could not do them within the books. So yes, but also it means that my blood pressure goes up, because I have to do my normal job and do additional job that I don't get paid for.
Yeah, there's a lot of really valid points there that ring true, and also that, you know, I think something that others may come in on is just one of the challenges is just the quantity of work you might engage yourself with, you know, as an activist, and how you avoid burning out, because the problems will always be bigger than the time that you might throw at them. So yeah, thank you, Mamadou. I'm not seeing anyone else coming in on this one, so I might throw in a different question. So I think actually I want to leave some time at the end for questions from the audience. So a question I invite you all to come in on is just around, you know, what, based upon your life experience, I suppose, of how you have found ways to step up and make a difference. For people listening who are maybe thinking, you know, maybe they're a student at the university, maybe they're a staff member or in the wider community, what top tips would you offer to people about ways to make a difference about issues they care about? Any pearls of wisdom that you'd like to share for people with that motivation, but maybe not yet finding things to join in with? I think Aisha, yeah.
I think that's a really good question that you asked, Andrew. I think first and foremost, it's building strong relationships, in my opinion. I think when you find a change that you're really just passionate about, you need to surround yourself with like-minded people, and you need to have like a tight-knit group with that, because that group is going to be your support system. So, you know, when things go wrong, when things don't go as you anticipated, that group will be there to kind of pick you back up and be like, that's okay, let's try it that way. How about we do it that way? This is something we learn from. So having that network and that safety net is something that I think is really good. And also, I would say don't hold back. I know it's easier said than done, but once you made your mind up and you are there, like, what's stopping you? Obviously, like, don't do anything that would put yourself in harm's way, but, you know, be there as much as you can and try to give it all you got.
Excellent.
I think that's what I would.
Excellent. That's I couldn't disagree. I think Tyra wants to add to that.
Yeah, definitely. I'll say advice I would give to others is to speak up and be vocal about the things that go on in their head. Because just linking to what I spoke about before in terms of barriers, like, you would spend a lot of time thinking that you're the only one thinking the way you do, unless you actually have conversations about these things. And just be bold and just be open. Like, what's the worst that could happen if you do speak about these things to people that you're surrounded by? And that's how you actually build, similar to what Asha just said, you literally build like almost like a community of people. By the time you speak, you open your mouth and then you find out other people think like you. So my advice is be vocal about what you're thinking. Don't be too scared to talk because somebody might feel or think a certain type of way. Like, what is the worst that could happen? And something I tell myself a lot of the time is you might as well just do something about it, because you regret not doing anything. Like, there's a 50-50 chance that it would go one way or the other. So yeah, my advice is just speak up and just go for it and hope for the best.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And once you do that, once you put yourself out there, you tend to find that, like you've experienced, there are people thinking the same who will get in touch and build upon your ideas, and it can build from there. I think we're going to have Matt and then Lexie. If you're both within about 5 minutes, that's spot on. Then we've got time for Q&A. Matt?
Thanks. So I'm thinking about this, perhaps particularly for the sustainability master students. The things that I would say is that there's absolutely loads of work to do here. We're going to transform the economy of the world to make the energy system and the way we run the economy deal with climate change. I'm convinced we're going to do it in the next 30 years. I really can see the wave coming, and there's not anything more exciting that you could be spending your career on than this. So if you think, what do I want to get up every day and do? There's absolutely tons of work to do here. First, go for it. Get involved. The second thing I would say, you know, Tyra, you talked about being with like-minded people, and I think Lexie, you said the same thing. I totally echo that. Find your team and find people you can work with, and just start somewhere. Whether that's in a work setting, whether that's like getting a job in sustainability or in energy or in climate, or whether that's through activism. Find people who you can vibe off and react to and engage with, and go from there. Because if you don't, on your own, it's really, really hard. But with other people, it can work work really, really well. And then both Aisha and Tara were both saying speak up and be vocal. And actually, I think even in formal settings, my experience is it's really important not to hold back too much. I think we think that we have to play by certain rules, particularly in a business setting, and we have to behave in a certain way and dress in a certain way with a shirt and a tie and follow certain formal rule books. But actually, the people who are making change happen in the business sector, the ones who are being really successful, are the business people who are not doing that and are prepared to say, this is what I really, I'm committed to. I'm thinking about a couple of examples. I can't remember his name. The guy who runs Iceland, the grocer. Iceland is really interesting from a sustainability perspective. They're doing absolutely tons of stuff. And the CEO of that company, the impact of Greta Thunberg, Vanessa Nakate from Kenya, Jamie Margolis in the States, the impact those young people have had, who are not even 18 yet, has been absolutely enormous and has helped give business people the room to do things that are different. So speaking out in that way is also super, super important. So those would be my, I guess, the messages I want to get across to you.
Brilliant. I couldn't enhance that by adding to it. I think that's all wonderful. Lexie, do you want to add a comment to that as well?
Only very, very briefly, Andrew, and that's just to say that talking about skills for the future and looking at that, the thing that comes up again and again is systems thinking and the interconnectedness of things. And I think it's really worthwhile saying that actually partnerships and collaboration are the only way we can actually make those things happen. It's really difficult to do systems thinking by yourself. So networks are your friend.
Yeah. And just to support the point Lexie made earlier as well around, diverse groups, so we'll be more creative and have better ideas if we're not all the same as each other, in terms of our ways of thinking, our background, etc., etc. So it's that sweet spot between a group of people who share your values and interests and enough difference in the room to be creative and come up with new ideas. Quick plug for anyone who's a DMU staff member, by the way, we're running a systems thinking course in a week's time. Look on the staff development page. A bunch of our colleagues have developed it. It looks very exciting and fun. It's something we're very committed to through our sustainability work. So we have 7 more minutes, and we have 2 questions that I can see from people watching. So one is from Beth, who's in the class. So that one goes first. And I think that's a question to Aisha. I don't know if it can be brought up. It was just about the response from DMU to the proposed name change, I think. Could I come back and for a couple of minutes comment on that one?
No, absolutely. That is such a great question. And I think originally, because we didn't just kind of spring it on them, we went and kind of had these active conversations with Andy at that point. He was the vice chancellor, and then we had the same conversation with Professor Katie Normington when she came in, and they were really great and really receptive, and they gave us the floor in a way to kind of plea our case and gave us the opportunity to be like, if this is what students want, we're here to hear you out. Let's see what goes on. They actually helped us organize an event that we put up recently, where we literally had historians gathered along with relevant people in the sector to come and speak about this openly, where we invited all staff and students at DMU. And they've been really helpful so far. So it's not been a massive pushback. Obviously, they have raised concerns and we've taken them into consideration, but it's not like it's been a straight up barrier when it comes to them. They're really receptive of our opinions.
Great. That's really interesting. I'm very curious to see how this will pan out as well. It's a really, I mean, as someone who works on, kind of education around sustainability, putting aside what happens, it's a fascinating learning opportunity. All the different issues that it brings up, I think, are really, really interesting. So I think there's a question from John Rowlett as well. I don't know if that one can be put on the screen. And then, I don't know, I think anyone might want to come in on this one. Oh, no, it wasn't that one. It was further down. It was about kind of 80% and 20%. I don't know if you can spot that one. There we go. So this idea of, do we pursue the thing that might have the biggest impact, conserving our change-making energies, or do we try for a more thorough systemic solution and being more inclusive? Does that question resonate for anyone? Anyone want to come in around that? I can see it might be relevant for Matt's work on energy, but it could relate to any issue probably. Yeah, okay, so Matt's going to offer some thoughts.
So I guess I want to separate the question into two parts, actually. So on the if 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes, my experience is that, yeah, you'd want to focus first on the 20% that can have the biggest impact. So I'm thinking about, the energy system and how we can change it. The most successful thing is going to be starting with where you can have the biggest impact. But I want to separate that out from whether that means you're not being inclusive, because I think even when you're focusing on the problems or the solutions that are the 20% of the problems and solutions that are going to have 80% of the impact, you still want to try and bring 100% of the people with you, because you don't know if you don't bring 100% of the people with you, then you don't know who's going to be able to object and throw a spanner in the works, and you also might have the wrong solution. So I'd say yes to focusing on the biggest problems first, or on the solutions that can have the biggest fix, but make sure you do try and include as many people as possible in designing the solutions. Otherwise, you won't even get those 20% of the solutions to those 20% of things over the line. Did that make sense? There's a lot of 8% and 20% in there.
That made sense to me, at least. So yeah, no, thank you. That's a really good response, I think. Okay, I see no other questions thrown in on the chat, so probably I'll take the chance to wrap up so we finish on time. So if we go back to the start, the object of this session was to explore how we can influence change for sustainability and social justice. We've heard lots of different contributions from our panel, lots of different issues they're focused on, lots of different roles they are in, and and the implicit message from the stories you've heard and the explicit message that we look at in the module is essentially that we all have a part to play. We are all connected to any system you might look at, whether that's systems of energy in the UK, whether that's racial inequality in society or within our university here. We've all got a stake in it. We all are able to influence change in some way, and it's just about recognizing our own opportunities, our own agency, finding the people that we can work with on that, and those create the foundations for having some sort of influence on change. And that's what we talk about in the module. So thank you for the panelists for joining. Really provocative and wide-ranging contributions, and thank you so much for giving up your time to join us. And thank you for Sandra and Mark behind the scenes, who've been keeping it running smoothly, and for doing this as a DMU event, so just sort of beyond it just being a class. And thank you everyone who's joined us today. I hope you found it engaging. And finally, thank you for my students, and I'll see you again in about 2 minutes on Blackboard for the rest of this afternoon's class. So thank you, everybody.